Former U.S. President Barack Obama admits that he made a mistake in failing to support Iranians back in 2009 when they were protesting the regime, which has been suppressing its people for many years now. To discuss this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, the massive protests continue in Iran against the Islamic Republic. Obama now says he should have done more.
Yeah, well, if I quote many of the Iranians who commented on our page when we posted the story, too little, too late. The reaction from the Iranians, both expatriates and inside Iran, is, well, yes, he should have done more because that was the right thing to do instead of chasing a nuclear deal that led us nowhere. But if he in fact felt this way, why did it take him and his wife 1 month to issue a statement of support for the current Iranian protesters that are out in the streets? As you know, people who are following this story are waiting for so many of these so-called champions of human rights, whether they're politicians or celebrities, to come out with statements of support, because they're the ones who can now become the social media ambassadors for a story that many people believe is not being properly covered by the mainstream media. So if in fact Barack Obama felt this way, then he should have come out sooner with his wife, because many people follow their social media accounts. Many people are waiting for them as political figures to come out with a statement of support. Nonetheless, better late than never in some ways. But we hope that this now translates into the Biden administration, which many people call the third term of the Obama presidency. Many hope that this now encourages the Biden administration to move forward in a different way with the Iran movement, to walk away from the Iran nuclear negotiations and to support the protesters going forward.
Lisa, there's word now that as protests continue over the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, the Islamic Republic is deploying its terrorist proxies into the country to aid security forces in cracking down on protesters.
Right. And this was the fear from the beginning, because this is what they resort to. There's a few reasons for this. First, because their own military could use the help. Second, because the Arab-speaking Basij or Hezbollah fighters don't have any emotional connection to the people or the protesters. So they will, in fact, crack down brutally, violently, whatever it takes to suppress the movement. And lastly, this is what they did in 1979. Many people report at that time that there was Arabic-speaking or Pakistani fighters on the streets of Iran trying to take down the reign of the Shah of Iran. That's what brought in this regime. And of course, many people are alluding to the fact that they may try these same tactics right now to quell the current protests.
Lisa, the Jerusalem Post is reporting that the Islamic Republic of Iran has been kidnapping 15-year-old child protesters. Does this just show that the state will stop at nothing in its attempts to quell the protests?
And to think this regime sits on the UN Committee for Human Rights, for women's rights. It's crazy what they are doing. I mean, where are the champions of human rights globally who need to do something to speak out and to create awareness about what the regime is doing? The way that they are rounding up women, molesting them, raping them, rounding up children, rounding up anyone, really. Their only goal is to say empower. A regime that will resort to this kind of violence against its own constituents, that will go into a university and kill its finest, that will set fires allegedly at their prisons where they're holding political and protesters, detainees. They'll stop at nothing. And that truly is the illustrative of what this regime has done for 43 years. It has stepped on human rights. It has repressed its women, its children, its finest, its authors, its poets, journalists, anyone who is looking to expand and to think and to question this regime. And that's what they're trying to underscore in the global community.
You know, it appears as though NATO is getting more serious about sending robots into ground combat. Now, the Royal Netherlands Army has been experimenting with Estonian-built robotics engineering in Lithuania.
Yeah, this is a crazy story, but one that can perhaps gain some momentum. They're on to something. We've seen actually some of this from the Israeli army when they try to send in unmanned vehicles, even on the ground, not just drones, but really they are testing all sorts of vehicles that will be basically the artificial intelligence or the unmanned robots that will do the fighting for us so that we don't have to send in human beings. I actually was at a conference at Ben Gurion University years ago, and they actually showed this technology can also help in cars that will help in drunk driving, so that if you can't drive the car, your car and the robotics and the technology of it, that is way over my head, but that could basically kick in and save someone's life should they need that control of the car. Now we're seeing that with the Royal Army of Netherlands, and perhaps this could be something new and really bring us into the next chapter of robotics, of military technology, and so on.
Could you imagine that? Let's say attacking drones, attacking unmanned tanks. This almost takes me back to when I was a kid and we were just playing with
Right,
our
like
toys.
video games. Absolutely.
It's amazing with technology today. Lisa, some more horrific news coming out of Ukraine. A UN official says Russia is giving soldiers Viagra to rape Ukrainians.
I mean, this is if this is true, this is honestly the lowest of the low in terms of the Russian army, and we can't put anything past them in that capacity. There are many stories coming out about the horrific way in which the Russian soldiers have been told to torture people and to rape women and to really kill anyone that gets in their way to really understand the task. And this is not the first story we're hearing about rape. It is the first that we're hearing about Viagra being given to them. But if this is in fact true, it's horrific. This needs to be underscored. The human rights aspect of this war is
Right.
hardly talked about. We talk more about the strategy and the fact that it's taken Putin so long. We talk about different cities that are being taken over, that are perhaps being annexed, that are perhaps being taken back by the Ukrainians in some capacity. But we talk about it in terms of military strategy, but we don't talk about the human rights aspect of this. And this story really highlights the fact that these people are there, and there are families there watching this horrific war unfold before their eyes. And really, the women, the children, the families, if they were not one of the lucky ones to get out of the country, this is the experience that they're having right now.
And Russia, apparently, which is allegedly really desperate for troops right now, is taking men off the streets and from homeless shelters to fight in Ukraine?
Yeah, if you remember, this is about a month ago, they announced the compulsory draft. And so many Russian men, young men, started leaving the country and trying to get to neighboring countries in order to not be part of the draft. There were protests in the country. They started rounding up the protesters at that point. It looks like they're desperate for manpower. And in that capacity, again, we talk about, where is the end of all of this? If Russia is not backing down, because we do hear about the fact that they have been weakened, they don't have the manpower, they need these soldiers, they need men to go into combat. But yet we don't see them surrendering. We don't see them backing down. We see them pushing forward. So it's really in this purgatory that the whole world is stuck in, watching Putin and giving him really the upper hand to make the next move. But again, what is the off ramp? What will make him stop all of this? And the biggest question being, will he escalate this attack to go into nuclear weapons and such forth, a nuclear attack, in order to have that final climactic ending that will put him as the victor when it comes down to the timeline of history. And again, big questions here with very few answers, but again, the fallout being the Russians that are being dragged into this war that do not want it, and the Ukrainians who are truly the victims of this invasion.
Has there been any discussion whatsoever about peace talks between Ukrainian President Vladimir Zielinski and Russian President Vladimir Putin? Where are we standing with that?
Right. As of late, we haven't heard anything moving forward about this. We know that there have been a few suggestions that are on the table, but it looks like when Zelensky comes out in public, the president of Ukraine, the only thing he's doing is asking for more money and more weapons. And with Russia, well, of course, Putin is, thumping his chest as usual and making it known that he will move forward. So we're not hearing much about moving closer to peace talks or surrender or compromises or anything like that at this point. But again, the global powers, they're not not really interfering in order to push forward for peace talks. They're actually, when they do come out, they come out in support of Ukraine and pledge another billion or whatever it is to help support Zelensky and his war as well.
You know, it's interesting. We've seen a lot of video as well from Associated Press here at Bridge City News of farmers trying to harvest their crops to feed not only people of Ukraine, but a lot of dire countries in need in Africa, different African nations. But they can't access a lot of their crops because of all of the mines that have been planted throughout their fields. You know, some of the troops pull away, they plant all of these mines, so it's making things even more horrific for a lot of people in Ukraine, including the farmers, the producers. Lisa, China's leader Xi Jinping is expected to receive a third 5-year term. That breaks a record and establishes himself as one of the most powerful Chinese politicians in history.
That's the thing about dictators, right? They can keep assigning themselves another term and another term and another term. And guess what? They set records for themselves. In this case, obviously, he has big aspirations as the leader of China to grow the empire that he has built, to expand in the region, to take over Taiwan, that he has pledged to take over. The world is just watching. I mean, we have allowed China to move forward with a lot of their aspirations. And even though there are very close kind of confrontations with China, there has never actually been a heated one. There has never been a direct one. And again, we sit back for him to have yet another term, and we will watch what will happen in this next term regarding Taiwan especially.
How tenuous is the relationship right now between the Biden administration and Xi Jinping, especially with China throwing its support behind Russia?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a little bit of a dance there, right? So the U.S. shows its presence in the waters surrounding China, and then China moves forward with showing its might by doing a missile test or showing up in the airspace over Taiwan after Nancy Pelosi's visit, for example. So there has been this kind of push and pull between the two. But again, with his announcement of another term and the Biden administration being very busy with Ukraine, with so many other foreign policy crises, for lack of a better word, China we're continuing this dance and watching what the next move will be.
Now, you talked about missile testing. Let's also circle back to North Korea for just a moment. What's the threat looking like when it comes to South Korea? Is there more missile testing going on there as well?
Yeah, South Korea looks like it has to take matters into its own hands. They have tried to collaborate with the United States, with Japan, and they have to a certain extent in order to basically be able to confront the threat from North Korea. Obviously, they know that they have many global powers in their corner as well in warding off the North Korean threat. But again, it goes back to a White House that has a kind of a leadership role in the global community, where there wouldn't be these types of threats, where there wouldn't be these provocations that are happening. When you look at China, when you look at Afghanistan, when you look at North Korea, you look at the Iran regime, they all understand that they have 2 more years of a Biden presidency that will not be America first, that will not want to flex its powers, or will not want to get involved in another war. Look how many we're involved in already, right? So, I mean, the Biden administration is trying to tighten the reins on foreign policy because they see what the last 2 years have done, how damaging it has been for our relationship with China and North Korea and the Iran regime and the Taliban and Afghanistan, and the list goes on. So we'll see if this can be corrected in some ways, because we are seeing, again, some sort of retreat from the Biden White House when it comes to certain foreign policy situations. But again, their own platform, the current White House has a foreign policy of appeasement, and they also have, tried to get along, so to speak, with many of our rogue enemies, adversaries, and again, it hasn't worked. So let's see if this revamping of our reshaping of foreign policy in certain aspects will bring us more global security. We'll have our assets be safer and more secure in different parts of the world, and makes for a better foreign policy going forward.
Lisa, before we let you go, let's bring things a little closer to home for just a moment here. And let's talk a bit about Donald Trump. There are rumors and there's word that he's considering running again for the next federal election. What are you hearing?
Yeah, that's definitely rumors. He probably will come out with an announcement sometime soon, because he will have to start campaigning. Meanwhile, the mainstream media has not been too friendly. He's involved in a few different scandals and court cases, and they're trying to subpoena him for different things. And look, he will have a very tough time running, even making it to candidacy because of all of this. And look, it's always been an uphill battle for him, and he's overcome. So who knows what the future holds? But meanwhile, there are others joining the race, like the governor of Florida, DeSantis, and a few others. So who knows? It's going to be a very interesting election year for 2024 here in the United States. So we shall see what Trump's role will be in all of that.
She's a political reporter and our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari. Thanks so much for joining us again from Los Angeles.
My pleasure. Thank you.